Without further, I think we have Dr. Warren Lee with us, who's a speaker for the next session. So I will hand over. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely to be part of this session. Thank you. We'll move on to the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, all the speakers and the chairpersons. I would like to invite Dr. Ayush to take over the next session, and please invite the speaker so we can move on to the next session.
Thank you, Verma sir. Thank you. Dr. Amitesh is not there. He has some medical family emergency. So Dhruvi will be there, I guess.
Thank you so much. We have a fantastic DTechCon going on. We've had a wonderful session, and Narsi Verma sir has, really made us all excited for the next session as well, which includes Futuristic Technologies. So our first speaker is Dr. Warren Lee. He is a pediatrician from Singapore. He's a fellow Academy of Medicine Singapore from 1997. He's also FRCP from London and RCP of Pediatrics and Child Health 2007. I have read his, profile online, and it says he was one of the first pediatricians to initiate insulin pumps in 1998 in type 1 diabetic patients. So I think without much further ado, I would like to request Dr. Warren Lee sir to, move on with our very, very first topic of our session on futuristic technologies.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Share screen. Yeah,
yes,
let me try and share screen with you all.
All right.
Let's see. How do you do this? Yes. Okay, so sorry. Just reviewing my slides while talking to you all. Okay, can you see me here?
Yes, right. We can.
So my topic, I think was a little bit difficult. I was asked to talk about alternative methods of delivery of insulins. And I think it's perhaps a little bit easier to talk about new insulins, new technologies to deliver insulins, and alternative delivery methods. It's a challenging talk to give, I must say. But anyway, first, my disclosures. I've been in this field for 30 over years. I'm very thankful to Banshi Sabu for inviting me to speak to old friends in India. And I have no conflicts of interest with regard to the contents of this talk, even though I've actually spoken on behalf of most of the companies in the field. I feel that the challenge of this talk is that there are multiple eminent speakers and domain experts. I just spent some hours listening to fellow experts just now. It's mind-boggling about the scope and expertise of the program. So the overlapping program topics and presenting accurate data on yet to be marketed products and services is actually difficult. While maintaining a sense of perspective regarding new technologies when it comes to convenience, efficacy, price, accessibility, affordability, usability, and relevance for own practice is a challenge, especially when listening to the reality that many of our patients are not where we live. They're not in tier 1 cities like Singapore or the major cities in India. Many people will have difficulties actually assessing basic insulin in countries in Asia, but also in communities within hitherto rich countries like America. So just to have a quick, short history of insulins, we first had insulins discovered about 100 years ago, first patented in 1923. The first recombinant human insulins came about 60 years later. 10 years later, the first analog started coming out. And soon after that, the long-acting analogs came out. And once the patents expired on these new analog insulins, we had the introduction of biosimilar insulins, as well as lots of places where they were making copies of the patented insulins. Now, 100 years since insulin was invented, we found that actually there's been a consolidation of the market, especially in the Western world. In China and India and Eastern Europe, there are companies that make insulin as well. But the big three actually control big parts of the market. Now, subcutaneous insulin has inescapable limitations. Firstly, it needs to be injected. Absorption is slow and erratic, and insulin is fed into the systemic rather than the portal circulation. And these absorption limitations cannot be overcome by engineering the molecule. So there was a commercial incentive to move on from the human molecule, which can be patented, which cannot be patented, to genetically engineered analogs, which can. And so we are in this era of patentable new molecules. And on the one hand, there is obviously a desire to reduce pain and suffering and make things easier for patients. On the other hand, we recognize that this is an area where people can make lots of money. So the analog insulins are essentially modified delivery systems, because at the end of the day, you still have to sit on the insulin receptor, which has not changed. The thing is that analogs typically cost 6 times the cost of human insulin, and they are better. And cost apart, there is not very good reason not to use them. But do they really help us to do the job? Are there other alternatives available? So what was the old paradigm? I put that in green. And what needs to change, perhaps in yellow? So the old paradigm is insulin is a protein, and it can only be given parenterally using a needle. Fast insulins were never fast enough, and basal insulins were never flat or predictable or long-lasting enough. Glucose levels and insulin delivered, we didn't know what that was. It was mostly guesswork, and therefore most dosing decisions and pump settings even were based on experience and dogma. So what we needed to do is to find other routes to give insulin, try to find ways to doing away with the needle or reduce the number of pokes, and actually get better insulin, so that instead of having to do 2, 3 insulins many times a day, perhaps to use one injection and then for long-acting, and different methods to give short-acting insulins. We could also have smarter dosing decisions. So we might get and integrate information about glucose and insulin levels and food in a very simple way. And while this has been done with pumps, could we do this without the pump? So strategies to reduce injection pain include needleless injectors, but for some reason, although they have good theoretical results, good absorption, there has been poor acceptance, and it's not very new. I didn't want to talk about them too much. We could reduce the number of injections by having super long-acting basal insulins from almost daily, glargine and detamir, to anytime daily, which is Tresiba or Degludec. And now there are once-a-week insulins coming on the market. Somebody is talking on this program about that. Or we could use injection pods, so that instead of injecting into your skin, you inject into the injection pod, and you change only once in 3 days, like an insulin pump, but you don't pay for an insulin pump. Or you might have faster acting mealtime insulins and smarter pens that can talk to your handphone and have AI to tell you how much to dose, so that you end up giving more correct dose and fewer correction doses, so fewer pokes. Or we might actually have insulin that is given without injections or needles. And that might be oral, intranasal, inhaled, rectal insulins, or even a transdermal patch. Now, let's just go back to a few basic things, right? So if you talk about glargine, this is one way to reduce insulins that were MPH given twice a day, even 3 times a day. And what they did was to change the molecule a little bit, so it became more acidic. And when you inject it, it turns into it sort of turns into aggregates underneath the skin and slowly releases. And with that, we had fairly decent long-acting insulins lasting a day. Then you had Degludec, and of course, in that era, detamir was the competitor. And then you had Degludec, the next thing, which from Novo, where they actually found a way to attach a fatty acid, so to make it last longer. And then we had basal insulin with GLP-1 analogs, mainly used in adults. I think it will come to type 1 diabetes and children soon enough. And basically with this is that if you use a basal insulin and an insulin sensitizer or GLP-1 analog, you will actually end up with fewer injections because there's a lower requirement, and these people are more able to make their meal boluses on their own. And then again, coming on this program soon, somebody will be talking about icodec, which is a new analog that is designed to last 1 week between injections. So that really will reduce the number of injections we might want to give, which then makes a short-acting meal insulin given by a non-injection method a much better viable option. Because there was the other point that if you had to give insulins, if you could give insulins without injection for meals, but end up still having to give long-acting insulins every day or twice a day, what was the point? So icodec actually is one of these things where you are able to bind this insulin to albumin, and it slowly releases itself. So we only need to give it once a week. How about making faster insulins? Well, so we had Lispro, which was invented over 20 years ago, but the people at Eli Lilly actually added things called prostacyclin analogs and citrate to make it to have local vasodilatation, so it could be absorbed faster. Okay, so it comes out faster. How about Fierce? This is Novo Nordisk's new thing, where they added vitamin B3 to their formulation. So again, it comes out faster. And all these things, yes, you can have statistically improved time of onset, rate to maximal, shorter duration, which makes it easier and more convenient to give meal boluses. So do they actually represent valuable advances? Well, you know, the insulin Lumjev is about twice the cost of generic insulin Lispro, And the retail prices for Fierce and Novolog in the States, which is the Novo branded form of NovoRapid in the US, is about the same on a per unit insulin basis. But before we run away with that, we have to understand that when we read these press releases about insulin in the States, you have to remember that insulin in the States costs about 10 times more than in any other developed country, even than their neighbor across the border, Canada. Okay, so if these are new insulins and they're going to be so costly, does it really represent an advance that we can use on our patients, or just something to read about, something that we better know something so that if our patients ask us, we don't look so ignorant? So coming back to more mundane things and topic of I was supposed to talk about, what are the challenges of alternative routes for insulin delivery? If you give by mouth, the buccal and sublingual mucosa present special problems for delivery due to the effect of the relatively thick multi-layered buccal barrier and the constant flow of saliva, which actually has enzymes as well. How about through the skin? Although the skin is easily accessible and has a large surface area, it is relatively impermeable to hydrophilic polypeptides, which are proteins such as insulin. So if you want to use it through the skin, you've got to find a way to get past this barrier. How about through the nose? Local barriers to absorption exist in the form of active mucociliary transport mechanisms. Okay, again, our nose is designed to get rid of stuff like pollutants and dust and pollen, which the body doesn't like. So it's got an enzymatically active, low permeability, low pH nasal epithelium that you must get through in order to go and have a peptide absorption like insulin. Not that they have not tried. How about through the lungs? Well, this is the largest available surface area for drug delivery, but you have the challenges of inspiratory flow rates which change, patient techniques, large inter and intra-patient subject variability, and the challenges that are posed by people with asthma, COLD, smokers, and carcinogenic potential, as well as the problems of the product itself, especially if you're in a humid climate like Singapore, does that change absorption? And so far, through the lungs, you've not had any long-acting insulin, only fast-acting insulins. Similarly, to the nose, fast-acting insulins, to the mouth, fast-acting insulins. So I talked about the basal insulins because without an effective basal insulin, you're not really reducing the number of injections and pokes, even if you have these alternative fast insulins. So how about nasal insulin? Actually, surprisingly, this thing is over 25 years old. And actually, the Novo Nordisk people tried doing this in the 90s. They used a lecithin-based enhancer. So lecithin is something that we use for non-stick frying. What was the issue? The side effects included transient nasal hyperactivity, pruritus, sneezing, rhinorrhea, and the chronic persistence of nasal crust. Now, actually, it had very good absorption, a lot of very, very good safety profiles and and there's an interesting article in 2021, which says that, in fact, administration of insulin nasally might help not just to control hyperglycemia, but there is a reported improvement in cognitive function, human memory, and also perhaps maybe in the prevention of things like dementia. Okay, so why aren't we hearing much more about this? I think sneezing, rhinorrhea, nasal crust, that might be a barrier to entry for a lot of people. But I think this is a space that we should watch, because in the elderly, if you can tell me that firstly, you can just squish the insulin and then you might actually help my cognitive function besides my blood glucose, maybe that's something that people will be thinking about. How about iontophoresis through the skin? Yes, there was some articles about this. You can look it up yourself. How about rectal insulin? Do you know that people actually try to give insulin rectally? And we can give anti-epileptics rectally. We can give analgesics rectally. Presumably, you can give rectal insulin as well. But for some reason or other, it hasn't really caught on. Wonder why. How about afreezer? Okay, so afreezer is actually one of the remaining inhaled insulins on the market. We all know about 15, 20 years ago, there was a lot of buzz on the market, and many people were talking about inhaled insulin, but it was not really a commercial success because of cost, and also because there was a worry about acute bronchospasm in those with chronic lung disease. And there was some concern about whether there might be, oncologic issues. But the other thing is that 1 unit of afreezer's insulin can cost as much as 20 times the price of other rapid-acting insulins. So, and this is at American prices. So if you think about it, maybe this is also an issue that will make adoption a problem. How about the smart insulins? So you've got these mannose-linked insulins, and this is a concept that mannose-related insulin analogs can lower glucose in a glucose-responsive manner. So not only are you talking about potentially giving a non-injection parenteral insulin, but that this insulin might actually be able to release more of itself when the blood glucose is high, and less of itself when the blood glucose is lower. Okay. You can also talk about oral insulins, and there's some development in this area, because the trick is to be able to protect the insulin while it is passing through the gut, and then increase absorption through the mucous barrier of the GI tract. Okay, and there's been a lot of development in this area. People talk about putting it in a muco-adhesive polymer. So you protect it from stomach acids and enzymes in the polymer, but once it reaches the mucosa, there's again something special about this polymer that is muco-adhesive, so that the insulin has time to diffuse through. Okay, so one of the words to one of the names to think of is Oramed, and you can read about them. Okay, so how about the insulin patches? So the insulin patches using the polymeric matrix, where you actually use chemical complexes to induce swelling once the insulin is actually passed through the skin barrier. But because it's actually through a skin patch, lots of little microneedles, you don't feel it as painful. And then when, according to the levels of glucose, glucose promotes the insulin release from the polymer. Again, something you can read about, it's just come into the news. How about automated insulin delivery devices? And we usually think about the pumps. There are about 600,000 pump users worldwide in 2021. But I was actually asked to talk a little bit about implanted insulin pumps. And actually, this is not new. It's been discussed since the 1980s. There's this venerable implanted insulin pump from Medtronic that was in many of people's slide presentations in the early 2000 era. And it's actually implanted underneath the skin of the abdomen, but there's a catheter which delivers the insulin in through the intraperitoneal space. But the problem is that there has not been a lot of development in this area. Only 4 people in the US and maybe 450 people worldwide are on this as of now. It went out of production in 2020, and it uses U400 insulin, which is not very, very common. But the new thing in this market is that last year, Medtronic has just bought a whole bunch of intellectual property from the same foundation that actually sold them the technology for their current line of insulin pumps, right? And this is a new set of implanted insulin pump technology that will be MRI compatible, that can actually detect occlusions. It's smaller than before, and it's got more precise delivery of insulin because the electronics are now better 20 years down the road. So I think we have to watch this space. There's another also European development where people have been trying to figure out, maybe if you can have a pill that it can actually deliver insulin into a pump that's implanted inside your body, that might be good too. So far, they've only tested it in pigs, but again, this is the PIL-SID, pill-sit device. Watch this space. I think it's important for us to actually just consider what is the current state-of-the-art technology, and that's the Minimid 780, which has got algorithms that help us bring the blood sugar down to about 5.1, 5.5 millimoles per liter. And not only that, but able to do this such that it only exits auto mode once a day, once in every 4 days instead of once a day, and by doing corrective boluses. So in order for a parenteral non-injectable device to reach this kind of accuracy, I think we have to bear in mind this is the bar that we are at. The Tandem T-Slim, their competitor, that's another thing which can be used with the Dexcom series, and their thing is 0 finger sticks. So again, you have reduced pokes simply because you have 0 finger sticks. Now, what if you don't want a pump? What if it's too expensive to buy a pump? So you've got the next level of insulin pens that now talk to your CGMS, that now talk to your smartphone, so that you can integrate information and make better decisions on how to give insulin doses. And here's your Medtronic one, where they've actually put it into a product. The algorithm is now on a phone. Their pen also talks to the phone, okay? And I talked about those people who don't want to give themselves a pump, but they also don't want to inject themselves so often. So you inject your pen into a pot, which has got a terminal end not so dissimilar from the way that our infusion sets work in insulin pumps. Okay, so that's with that. I end. I think I've just run out of time, but it's just a quick overview of the technology available. How we must actually not look at just one of the developments in this field, but how sensors, AI, delivery devices, new insulins have to work together with the aim of reducing number of injections, pain of injections, and overall burden of treatment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. It was indeed fantastic to listen about all the alternative delivery systems for insulin. It's always very intriguing to us, to be able to understand whether in the future these all will be, having some kind of potential to be into the actual market and for us to be able to prescribe them. Just one quick question, if I'm allowed. what is your take on the insulin capsules that are coming out or are in the pipeline?
Yeah, so those are the insulin capsules that are going to be coming out. They're ways to again protect the insulin from the stomach acids and yet improve the absorption into the gut. I think what will be the big constraint here is the ability to get very fine-tuned dosing. Things like a freezer, for example, one of the reasons why it didn't work very well is that you needed a very cumbersome system. You needed several capsules or several dose portions, and because to get the relevant dose, and because it was so expensive, you still needed a basal insulin. So I understand you're a pediatric endocrinologist like me. So for our patients, is that really practical? And if you consider American pricing, vis-a-vis the rest of the world pricing, vis-a-vis the buying ability, I mean the consumer ability to pay, even if you talk about pricing for third world and first world countries outside the United States, is it really practicable within the next 10 years? But who knows?
Can we take the questions now after all this talks? We'll have 15 minutes for that. Can we have?
Sure.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Lee. I think we'll move on to our actual Indian leader and a very, very dynamic endocrinologist and diabetologist from Thiruvananthapuram. Dr. Jyoti Dev, sir, is the chairman for Jyoti Dev's Diabetes Research Centers from Trivandrum. He's the editor-in-chief for the International Journal of Diabetes and Technology that we all look forward to for putting our papers into. He publishes a GEMS newsletter every month almost, and we look forward to that also. He is the first author to a lot of Indian guidelines on vaccination, on insulin pumps, and he's our very own Indian, dynamic person leading us from the forefront in technology. So with that, I'm going to request sir to, take over the digital stadium.
Thank you, Dr. Dhruvi, for the kind words of introduction. Long time we met, so I'm planning to come to Ahmedabad to meet you.
Thank you, sir. Sure.
And hello, Amit. And hello to my co-speakers. Both of them are good friends, Dr. Varenly and Divinci. So I am given a very special topic. So I will start sharing my slides. Hope it is visible now. Thank you.
Yes, they are, sir.
So I am given the task of discussing the non-invasive glucose monitoring systems. So you may be wondering why this topic, since none of these are currently commercially viable or available. But as Dhruvi said, this is a forum where we are going to discuss on those technologies which are probably not available, but will be soon available in the market. There is a difference between treatments and technologies. So when you discuss about treatments in diabetes, if you have a time-tested treatment or a medication for diabetes, it is here to stay forever. However, with technologies, it keeps on advancing. It keeps on improving. And this happens with glucose monitoring as well. Glucose monitoring with Benedict's reagent, it lasted for almost a century, almost 100 years. And now we are using these glucose meters and continuous glucose monitoring devices, and we are also using the automated insulin delivery devices, as we have listened to the previous speaker, Varenly. So these are my disclosures, nothing to disclose about this lecture. So how can we forget GlucoWatch Biographer? I still remember lecturing on GlucoWatch Biographer back in 2005. I have a passion for history, and that is why I included this in my lecture. GlucoWatch Biographer, if somebody is asking you, this is the world's first and still the only US FDA approved device for non-invasive glucose monitoring, automatically capturing the glucose levels without any bricks required. But this is a very unfortunate story. It is a story of a failure. Look at what animals did. Animals lifespan, they thought this is a panacea. This is the end of glucose meters, and they decided to purchase Cygnus in March of 2005 through a $10 million deal, only to recognize that this results in skin irritation. It is insufficient in its accuracy. Not only lives can burn their fingers, the device also burned the skin of many, many users, because this can result in burning of the skin. And within a few months, US FDA decided to recall the device. Still, I believe, even though this is a story of failure, I still believe that this will have a position. This will have a position whenever we are discussing non-invasive glucose monitoring technologies. Remember, the Apple Watch, which we are using nowadays, 2 decades before Apple Watch was launched, GlucoWatch Biographer was launched with multiple sensors to monitor the glucose levels. So we should never forget this technology. So let me now share something very personal, and this is something which is still preserved in my diabetes museum. And this is the first glucose meter which I purchased for my mother, the Ames reflectance glucose meter. That was in the early 1990s. And this is, of course, the first CGM device. The CGM was gold from Minimum Medtronic, which was launched officially in India in 2004. And this is also kept in our diabetes museum. And this has been the story of the evolution, how all these monitoring devices evolved from the first to the second to the third generation of continuous glucose monitoring and to the fourth generation of the non-invasive monitoring, which we are going to discuss today. So I would admit that most of the devices that I am going to discuss, more than 24 devices are there in the pipeline. Only 3 or 4 of them are now available commercially. But I don't think none of them are reliable enough for a clinical use. But still, we are dreaming for accomplishing non-invasive monitoring. The reasons are multiple. It is costly. You have to have a recurrent expense. If you are using a non-invasive monitor, there is no recurrent cost involved. But if you ask a patient, why are you not monitoring as per the recommendations from your doctor? The most important reason will be the pain of monitoring. Pain of monitoring. That is the most important, I will say, the deterrent factor for patients not to adhere to a structured monitoring of glucose levels. And of course, rarely it can lead to infections. It is time consuming. You have to carry around all these devices. And hence, the non-invasive monitoring technologies have become, currently it has become an international research topic. And if it is going to be successful, I'm pretty sure that this will be successful in the coming years. This will bring a vast relief to, it will bring a relief to millions of patients, millions of people with diabetes all over the world. So let me start my discussion introducing a device which I have purchased a couple of months back. And this was introduced to me by a patient, a person with diabetes in a neighboring country. And then I started inquiring, and then I stumbled upon a website, and then I could purchase it online. I tried to contact them, but there was no response. The organizers, we all tried to contact ETH as for participating in DTechCon, but we didn't get a response. And they claim as if this is the world's first patented high-tech non-invasive device for glucose monitoring. And you have 3 modes available. So you can see the device. So this is the device. And there are 3 modes available. One is normal. The second is pre-diabetic mode. And the third is diabetes. And they have actually made a statement that this should not be used for type 1 diabetes. So obviously, this is not a reliable meter, but it is pretty very fast. Within 15 to 30 seconds, it will provide you with the result. And you require only 2 3-year batteries. But I will say that this is very expensive. I have paid 30,000 Indian rupees for an online purchase of this meter. So it is very, very expensive, but it consumes very low power. One battery will last for almost 1,000 tests, easy to carry. There is no need to carry any needle or pen or lancets or alcohol or cotton. And this is how you have to test. You have to wash your hands with soap and water, and then you have to place the thumbs and fingers over the sensors. I will show you a demonstration video where I am the person over there. I am a person with pre-diabetes. So I have checked my glucose in the glucose meter. It is 135 milligrams per deciliter. And this is 1 hour after the food. And now I am going to check with my e-test us, which is a non-invasive glucose meter. And there are 2 sensors at the back and 2 sensors in the front. You can see that, and I am touching those with my thumbs and index fingers. And you should not be using the tip of the finger, you should be using the surface. And you can see that the reading is almost closely matching, but unfortunately, when I repeat it, after a minute or so, there is a difference of almost 30 to 40 milligrams per deciliter. So obviously, this is just a prototype device, not for a reliable clinical use. So how do you classify these devices? So the monitoring devices can be invasive, non-invasive, or it can be minimally invasive. And all these devices are currently available, and the non-invasive are the ones of interest to us. And many, I would say that more than 25 of them are now in the pipeline, undergoing clinical trials. So if you ask me, what are the advantages? The advantages are multiple. No needles, no prick, no blood, no test. But I would say that if I go back to this device, you can see this in my video, there are no testers. There are only 4 sensors. And I need to replace these 2 batteries. And that's it. That's it. So there are no recurrent expenses for the sensors or for the glucometer strips. And it is very, very convenient for me to carry around. So the ultimate benefit is going to be cost saving for the person, in addition to relief from pain. So we are all doctors, not supposed to discuss the methodologies, but I believe that when I am discussing about non-invasive monitoring, we should have a basic understanding on how we are capable of measuring the glucose non-invasively. So broadly, this can be divided into optical, microwave, and electrochemical methods. And the optical methods could be near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy, that is NIRS, polarized optical rotation, Raman spectroscopy, fluorescence, or optical coherence tomography. So these are the multiple optical methods. And then you have the electrochemical glucose biosensors, first, second, and third generation. Third generation will have the direct glucose oxidase electrode. So I will briefly go through the optical methods. I will discuss only one, and that is a Raman spectroscopy. I still remember in one of the ATTDs 10 years ago, there was a demonstration of 1 or 2 devices based on Raman spectroscopy. It was once thought to be very, very accurate. And this is based upon the principle of scattering phenomenon of light. And it detects the fundamental vibration of atomic grooves. But unfortunately, though it was supposed to be accurate, when it's tested in human beings, there are differences in the skin tone. There are differences in the level of hydration. There are differences in the basal metabolic rate and the skin thickness. And this results in variability in the glucose levels. And hence couldn't be replicated in the real clinical situations. And when you are overall discussing the demerits are much more than the merits of all these optical methods, which are cumbersome, requiring sophisticated devices and large interference of background signals, also limiting the use. And when you are actually getting a glucose value, again, you have to correct it with the help of algorithms. And hence, clinically, it was found to be not viable. So let me now move on to another area, and that is based on biofluid, measuring glucose from the biofluid. So I will have the discussion of the saliva, because saliva is the easiest to collect, very easy to extract, because I know that I have done a genetic test also based on saliva. And there is a good correlation between the salivary glucose and the blood glucose levels. And in addition to glucose, you have lactic acid, phosphate, there are many enzymes for digestion, there are steroids, antibodies, etc. in the saliva. The tear, another rich media. There is salt, there is protein, there is less of impurities such as bacteria in tears when compared to saliva. And there is also a positive correlation with the glucose levels. Sweat is another media, a very hot media, possible for measuring with a wearable device such as seen in this picture. And you can even combine this with a CGM or with an intelligent closed loop system. This one has been very popular in the news. I remember until 2 years ago, we have been actually anticipating the arrival. Google and Novartis, along with Dexcom and other major players, were actively involved in research on having a contact lens based. And this is also dependent on a fluorescent light to monitor the glucose. But unfortunately, the results were disappointing. And the contact lens based glucose measure, and this also has faded out. So unfortunate. So I'm so sorry that most of those areas where I'm discussing today are non-invasive. They have been tested, they have been in the clinical trials, but found to be unreliable, insufficient reliability for clinical use. And moving on to tattoo-based non-invasive. And this is also part of my title of the lecture. Tattoo, as seen in the picture, is easy to wear. And this is based on a reverse endophoric extraction of interstitial glucose along with enzyme-based amberometric biosensor. So this is a schematic representation over there. You have a iontophoretic sensing system, and this is a tattoo-based paper. And you can see the silver electrode, the pressure boost electrode, the transparent insulating layer. And this is a process starting from diet and then how it is measured and how the glucose is detected. Moving on to another major player in the market, the Diamond Tech. And they have come up with easy solutions. Only a couple of seconds to measure the glucose levels, fast, painless. And all of them are claiming that this is cost effective. Of course, it is cost effective because there are no strips involved. There is no recurrent expenses. And there are 3 different products which are in the pipeline from Diamond Tech. And this is a D-base, D-pocket, which I can carry around it looks very similar to a mobile phone. And then you have a D-sensor, and this is similar to a wearable device. So despite all those advantages that I have discussed, the demerits, the drawbacks are much more for these biofluid-based sensing mechanisms. In saliva, there are innumerable impurities and interfering substances, including bacteria. In tear, there is poor precision. All of them, they are hysteretic. In sweat, if the person is not sweating, then you may not be able to measure. And ISF, again, skin irritation. So probably these are not providing the reliable results as expected. So moving on to non-invasive continuous glucose monitoring system. So until now, I have discussed some of those promising results and devices for non-invasive glucose monitoring. And these are non-invasive CGM devices. I will probably showcase only a couple of them. Many are there in the pipeline, and this is G-Wave. Why is it important? Last year, the US FDA has granted a fast-track designation for this device. The sensor is inserted. You can see this in the picture. The sensor is inserted in a ceramic lightweight, a very comfortable bracelet. So it is again in the form of a watch worn over the wrist. And this uses radio frequencies to measure the glucose levels. So most of these guys, Graphia, Movano, My Sugar Watch, D-Sensor, all of them are actually using the watch as the wearable technology for measuring the glucose. And the similar ones are from LifeLeaf, the Affan watch. This one is different. Novio Sense is different. And this is a sensor which is placed under the lower lid. And this can wirelessly send glucose levels directly to the smartphone app. So almost all of them you can see, they're all wirelessly connected via Bluetooth to the app in the mobile phone. And some of them have AI, some of them have predictive algorithms. So similar to the CGM that we are currently using, they can also provide you with predictive glucose levels and can get connected to the closed loop systems. Sugar Beat is another one which is commercially available. But this one is different from the other sensors that I have discussed. And this is a UK-based Nemura Medical approved for use in the US. Approved for use in the Europe, not in the US, sorry. And this is a small peel and place patch. And this needs to be replaced once in every 24 hours. So there is a recurrent expenses involved in this adhesive-backed rectangular transmitter, and this sends wireless readings to the smartphone app via Bluetooth every 5 minutes. So now moving on in excitement, and this is an exciting innovation from India. We tried to contact them too. We tried to email them, but there was no response. And this is the news which has appeared all over in the visual and in the print media across the country. So if I need to be convinced, of course, this is Blue Semi, and we are not aware of any clinical trials that they have conducted. They claim that they have conducted clinical trials, and they claim that they have published the data, but I couldn't find any publications. But they have showcased this product, and they have officially launched at the CES convention in Las Vegas this year, early this year in 2022. If we need to dig into the depths of this device, it is an innovative patented technology leveraging sensor fusion. There is intelligent artificial intelligence, very accurate algorithms, and smart Internet of Things. And this is again with the help of multiple sensors. More sensors are there when compared to eTouch US. And this is how it can measure 6 vitals. So this can measure 6 vitals within 60 seconds. Apart from glucose, electrocardiogram, heart rate, blood pressure, SpO2, and temperature. So it looks very, very exciting. And this is the screenshot from my own Apple phone. The Apple Watch measuring the activity, the SpO2, the ECG, the activity, the sleep with auto sleep, even VO2 max. So everything is now possible with Apple Watch. And I would probably believe in non-invasive glucose technologies to be reliable enough for clinical use when Apple introduces this in Apple Watch. Because there is a rumor for the last 3 years that Apple or Samsung will be introducing this in the wearable devices. And I believe that this is soon going to happen. And that is when it is reliable enough for clinical use. So why have we included non-invasive glucose monitoring in DTECON today? And this is a reason. The experts believe that there is a potential for these devices to make it big. And the industry analysts believe, and they're predicting a booming market, a very booming market for non-invasive technologies in diabetes in the next 5 years. And here I stop. Thank you very much for the patient hearing and for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. It is actually beyond interesting to listen to all the newer technologies and the non-invasive monitoring systems that are coming up, and which, every new day, I think we have newer and newer things to learn from. So I think we'll take the questions in the end, and let me move on to introducing our next speaker, Dr. Jyoti Dev from Sweden. Can I have his CV on the screen, please? All right. Dr. Jyoti Dev is the principal CHI Awakening Academy and president for the Channel Biomedical Group. He is the managing director, Asia and Middle East, Mercodia AB. He's the vice president for Society of Harmonic Science International, and he's also board member for Happy Years AB. So I think he's got a very vast experience in specializing in translational medicine and trying to bring in innovation and connecting it with scientific advancement into the scientific medical community. He's a Dutch citizen, Chinese origin, and a resident of Sweden. So he's a multinational and an international faculty across the globe. And he's got a vast experience in the field of diabetes. His new disruptive theory on diabetes and disease development model are in direct challenge to the century with a long definition and strategy on diabetes. So I would request Dr. Jyoti Dev, sir, to talk more about the CHI fractal bioanalysis on mind and body in diabetes and beyond. So with that, over to you, Dr. Dev.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And all right. It's really a great pleasure to be on this platform to share my topic with all those great speakers and doctors. So without wasting much of time, I would like to continue this session with my topic, talking about a particular way of analyzing the body and mind connection in diabetes and also beyond. So I start my talk with a reference Nobel Prize winner Niels Bohr. In 1932, and there was an international congress on light therapy. And he was invited to give a talk. And in this talk, he talked about science and life, and he raised up a very challenging question. His question is about whether there's something fundamentally missing in our understanding about life because of the limitation of our human physics. Like the vision we have, the smell we have, the touch, the sense, all these things. And his question is extremely challenging, but it raised up a very interesting research area for someone. Here is the Dr. Dubek. He was a physicist. And because of Dr. Bohr's topic, he started to look into biology. And because of his work, we actually started to understand the fundamental information structure in the virus. And this is actually the beginning of the modern, let's say, molecular biology. And later on will lead to the discovery of DNA. And today, matter is already considered at the fifth stage of information considered at the fifth stage of matter. So if we look at it from a computer we use to our own body, DNA, everything is about information. And if you look at the future of medicine today, we already see AI, everything. So the future of medicine is electroceutical and AI technology, and the future is today. If you look at diabetes, what is the fundamental challenge? After 100 years, our diabetes still focuses on the matter of insulin sugar based. And this is the reality today. Just look at type 2 diabetes. We have a long delay if you look at the tissue damage over 15, 17 years. And again, 50% undiagnosed type 2 diabetes. And our focus still is focusing on glycemic control. And the more challenge is when it comes to managing a single disease, we require multiple disciplinaries to involve. And the so-called integration is actually making is a more difficult challenge. And today we understand the mind-body connection. We also understand the childhood experience, how to change our biological and behavior mechanism. So this also leads to the new science called psychoneuroendoimmunology. But bundling is not true integration, unfortunately. If we don't change our view, we cannot change our destination. So the way we practice medicine is basically we use hundreds of medicine to treat one disease. But the truth is, we should use one medicine to treat hundreds of diseases. That's the wisdom of medicine or true healing. And that is also, is it possible that one doctor can realize true integration in one own clinic? So if we go back to information, life is not biological, it's information seated. Everything we matter behind that is invisible information system. So here is the world of fractal. So from Indians Surya Yantra to the Chinese yin yang to the nature to our own body, everything embedded so-called golden ratio, mathematical algorithm. And this is also same with our body, everything in the same algorithm, one fundamental algorithm. So the so-called fractal is fragmented. Fragmented structure, the most important dependency on initial condition. And this is the true benefit about understanding in medicine. So this is so-called a butterfly effect. So a butterfly flaps wings in Brazil instead of tornado in Texas. So by understanding the influential factors, we can predict and look at the outcome, the consequential consequence in health. So with this, we can truly understand the systematic information is not limited to the physical body, but really mind, body, energy, everything all connected. And it's about one for all for one. And today, fractal in medicine actually long been researched, and even in diabetes field have been applied. So this system I'm talking about has fractal and also heart rate variability, stress theory, and neurodynamic algorithm. So this system is very intuitive software. It just takes about 5 minutes, and you can measure the bioenergy and the biodynamic, and also have diet recommendation, Indian's Ayurveda dosha analysis, and also have a healing, with sound healing and breathing exercises. So just briefly, what it is about. The pulse we measure in medicine is applied in all different healings, including Ayurveda. So our heartbeat is actually a black box of all different rhythms. So by looking to the fundamental rhythm, the stroke and overtone, and basically create a binary coding system. And with this coding system, we will be able to calculate how the energy transferred in a body. So to make it easy to understand, you see, we are all energy. So if we follow natural way, we are healthy. The rhythm we have should be same as the rhythm of nature, like so-called golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence. So now, that part of the introduction just briefly goes through what it's about. And now I want to go through a specific case, look at how it can change our understanding about diabetes or other diseases. So here I started with one example, a diabetes patient, type 2 diabetes. So first, look at generic picture, what we can get. See, here I'm showing 4 parameters. One is looking at heart, the cardiac adaptability, and one look at autonomic system, and one look at hormone, one look at the brain. If someone is healthy, he should be 100% according to the nature algorithm, so that should be 100%. But if we deviate from the nature pattern, that means his condition is not optimal or not healthy. And you look at this person, we can conclude to see there are a few things there: heart, hormone, and autonomic system, particularly all in red. The only a little bit better one is the brain in the reddish, that's normal status. But a really good state, according to nature, is green. There's nothing green here. And also, you can see his heartbeat is very hard, very fast, and overall, the condition is very low. So from here, we move on to how's this person's brainwave. And this brainwave you look at, it shows this person have ADHD brainwave. So what is ADHD? Today, with a lot of discussion, fundamentally, it's activation of right brain or spiritual intuitive brain. So that person has a large, let's say, huge subconscious connection. So I think, we probably all know about the left-right brain differences. The left brain, logical brain, per second, we can do about 40 things at the same time. The right brain, we can do 25,000 things without a conscious understanding. So this is why this is the fundamental root cause of this person's physical condition. He's extremely stressed and his hormone level is high. So because the brain is extremely active, and it also makes it very difficult to go to sleep and vulnerable to mental problem. And this also gives him another benefit, that this kind of person, they're multitask oriented. So they simultaneously doing several things. So that's why they cannot focus. Now, next, I move on to look at the brain and how it connected with the body. We look at a circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm today already being, reviewed scientifically. There's a Nobel Prize winner that our body is basically a biological clock coming with the natural energy. So what is showing here, you see, the energy pattern in the evening is high. That shows this person at night has more energy. So this is very difficult to sleep. And this is also because the mind is managed by heart. So his energy at heart is low. And same time, if you look at the other end, where its energy related to liver, gallbladder, is quite active. So normally when you have energy high, it's good, but unfortunately here it's not. because the liver is connected with sugar, like we talk about glucose. So that means this person is using sugar as main source of energy. And at the same time, you also look at the emotional connection, mind, let's say the brain-gut connection. So you see his problem, physiological problem, the large intestine, small intestine, all relate to detox. So he has a problem with the detox. That again, is not because the gut started a problem. The gut, mind, and the brain, they are connected. And the mind already talked about it, that he has a very busy mind. And next thing, we move on to look at how it's connected with energy. And here I'm showing the image looking at the connection between the chakras and the meridians. So you see the highlight here is the blocked heart meridian and small intestines. So this shows emotional connection with the mind, the heart, the mind, the connection. And if you look at the chakras, and for Indian, I think we should be very familiar with the chakras and meaning to relate to the different stress from mental to the emotion to immune stress and communication. What is interesting, again, you see, here I'm showing the chakras, the third that manipulate. Normally, we say high energy is good. I say, no, not here. When it's in balance, particularly strong on third chakra, it shows someone very active with the pancreas or liver, particularly liver. So that once again, I point out that this person using sugar as a main source of energy. And this, we can connect the dot. So mind, see, we talk about diabetes so often. See, I always ask a very simple question. Why we use so much sugar? Where the sugar goes? 60% of sugar supplied to our brain. As someone has such an active brain activity, so will he use a lot of sugar, particularly when you cannot sleep at night and go to bed late. So even more active trigger the use of liver energy. And that's where the fundamental set off of the diabetes. So in conclusion, the root cause of this person's diabetes is actually because the brain pattern is lifestyle is secondary. So subconscious mind determines what you eat, what you do, and there are also emotional blockage. And his problem is not about diabetes, sugar, it's about mind, heart, and the liver at high risk. And we also know that 70% of people die from cardiovascular disease in diabetes. So now I move on to the next example. Here we have extremely obese female, very young female patient, and he's supposed to go on to bariatric surgery because of too much weight. So here, again, let's look at, starting with the mind. It shows the same active pattern of previous patients, the diabetes patient. So very active subconscious connection. But what even more, this person, she has another trait. Clinically, we call it so-called autistic or Asperger or ultra-sensitive. What really it means? It simply means such a person, they're active both at the same time, left, right brain. The logic and intuitive mind work at the same time, so create internal conflict. So this person's brainwave tells everything about her eventual outcome with weight and loads of other things. So similarly, we move on from the mind, we look at a connection to the body. Here, same pattern. This kind of person, very difficult to sleep. At night, the subconscious, intuitive mind become active. So they are very difficult. They are very creative at night. So that's one thing is fundamentally disturbing. And second, again, similar to the previous diabetes patient, this obese individual also have a very active liver and gallbladder. So that's, again, related to the problem that is, one is sugar use, going to be a lot. Second, because she sleep so late, because active, so there wouldn't be a proper detox in her body. And that again link the similar thing, the mind and I see the brain-gut connection here. So emotionally connect to the digestion and detox issue. So her metabolic problem, again, relate to the fundamental issue with the mind. What is more, when we look at the chakras and the meridians, we can see more information here. Particularly, I want to point these two connections here. You see, in the chakras, the heart chakra is the lowest. And then in the other side, the meridian, the heart meridian is the lowest. So these two connections, again, point out the same thing, the energy imbalance. And her main problem, the risk, is actually cardiovascular risk because of emotion. What's even more, because of such active mind, she has a lot of mental stress. That's another hidden issue. And next step is looking at mother connection, mother relationship. When I did consultation to this person, the moment I start open my mouth, the tears just pouring down. In 20 minutes talk, she hasn't stopped with crying. And when I talk about her mother relationship, mother was sitting there and she just cried even more. Because this kind of person is extremely sensitive. And the child is mother. Mother is nature of water. The second, sacral chakra, is a water element. So that is a strong link related to the physiological condition. And again, same outcome. Strong indication of active labor because the manipula or the third chakra, navel activation. So the conclusion here, again, the brain patterns, the childhood impact, the social stress, all this, and in the end, she confessed. The way she changed her diet, everything started around 6-7 years old. So that is just quick going through diabetes and metabolic, and now move beyond diabetes. What I'm showing here, this is the absolutely 100% according to the natural pattern. Someone is healthy, everything 100%. What is a complete unnatural? Cancer. Just look at this profile on top. Cancer patient, typical cancer patient, is almost everything is only 1%. Some even have a 0%. And this another 1%, 2%. Typically, it just to say in 5 minutes test, without doing anything, you can identify someone already. This is a cancer patient. And another I'm showing to share with everybody about another powerful combination is the chakras and meridian. In this type of patient, someone have very strong heart chakra. That means he's a very giving person. And that has a lot of love nature. But when it comes to meridian, it's energy provided to yourself and they lock themselves. This emotional contradiction is very often found in particularly breast cancer patients in female or a cardiovascular problem in male. And just with this test, I've identified people with breast cancer, brain cancer, bone cancer, colon, kidney, prostate, stomach cancer. And beyond that, also look at a relationship. So many people that I come across have tears. That's something they have never been told by anyone else. Just by looking at their chakras, energy, brainwave, I can understand their relationships in childhood with their mother. Another thing, talking about biofeedback as therapeutic intervention. What do we do? Do we really making change, meaningful change? So it has a biofeedback, look at a change before and after. And this is showing a cancer patient profile before and after the energy change, the brain change. And similar things, showing the same change. Another thing very important, today we so often give a consultation, but not everybody understand at the same time, and also their brain state is not same time. And also in India, I know a lot of diabetologists and specialists encourage people to do yoga meditation, but how are they doing? We don't have a tangible measurement. Here, we can show exactly which state is the individual at age. So this has two implications. One is if someone practices yoga or meditation, you understand the state of mind. The other very important is actually to understand the patient's emotion. You can tailor your consultation to that particular mind setting. If someone in a subconscious mind, like the right brainwave, a delta wave, this is typical. You can link to emotion, link to imagination, visualization, and they respond extremely powerful. If someone in the right brainwave, that is beta wave, for example, and this typical like logic, so medical analysis could be very interesting. So here I just quickly wrap up this presentation with a short, 20 minutes. I like to quote someone, Albert Sangiorgini. He said, all life are the same tree of life, but the different leaves. The different functions we specialize, just manifestation of the same living matter. So we adapt to different jobs, different circumstances for the same basic principles. So in principle, it wouldn't matter whether we study nerve, kidney, or muscle to understand basic principle of life. But in reality, it matters a great deal. And this is the reality today we are facing. Today, just talk about diabetes, wonderful diabetes technology progress. Yet, every 5 seconds, one person dies from diabetes. And today, there's an even huge population grow into diabetes. And I think that is the same thing that we have to look at again, have to change our view before we really, truly make a meaningful change to our destination. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. T. It was wonderful to listen about the child fractal bioanalysis. If I'm pronouncing it right now I can, connect that it is the child fractal bioanalysis and not the CHI. It was wonderful to listen to how you're connecting the mind and body and how we are going beyond the, metabolic parameters. It's been wonderful. Can I request the organizers, if we have some time to take up some questions for Jyoti sir, for Dr. T?
Absolutely, ma'am. Ma'am, we have our next session at 6:30, so we can have some time to discuss. If we have any questions.
So I think that there aren't any posted questions right now, but it'll be very interesting to, listen a little bit more. I have just one question. Dr. T did actually elucidate a lot about the chakras and how can you, study the brain waves, and is it practiced so widely? We've been hearing this in India. There are a lot of doctors who are trying to recommend that you align your energy and your auras. And I think the studies that you showed go deeper and the analysis goes deeper. But if you have to put it into some simple words for our audience to understand right now, Dr. Cheek, could you just, try and do that in a simpler manner?
I'm not sure if I can put it in that way. Just the simplest way is looking at, today we're looking at diseases, we look at the outcome of the tornado event. But we understand the butterfly is about the flipping wing. And the flipping wing, we look at it, physiology of the body. It's just mathematically, we follow the same pattern, we are healthy. So this is how the energy is connected. So our brain started energy. Let's see, the mind connection to the body is just, if you look at the algorithm of nature, you find the link. And there, one thing today, this is difficult to outline. The way I've been working today is really, I work in different fields, and particularly in psychology, not in diabetes, I created this kind of tsunami, but also in other fields, spirituality, also in psychology. Today, we look at diabetes patient, how many people have mental issue? We always use the counseling. As an Indian, we know the logical mind is here. The intuitive mind is here. That's actually the root cause of it. So unless we go into the deep there, we cannot solve the problem. So that's why to understand truly the mind-body connection is so essential.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. T. I think a lot of us are moving towards that direction wherein we say that you have to take care of the mind and body both together. Any other questions from the panelists, from the organizers over here?
Yeah, Dr. Dhruvi, I would just like to make a comment here. Dr. Warren Lee talked in detail about all the newer insulin technologies and therapeutics, and the talk was really wonderful. He actually took us through a journey of development of the insulin and what exactly is there. And we are very grateful to Dr. Jyoti Dev, sir, who, despite having a medical emergency at home, he is still committed to this session. And he presented his talk, and it was really enlightening to see all of the devices. To be very true, I was not aware of that first watch which you just showed today. We just thought it is just the Apple which has launched this kind of things, but only you gave us the insight that the technology is so advanced that it was already there in 2005. So thank you, sir, for that wonderful talk. And Dr. Jibinchi, it really comes as a surprise to me, because you have talked about those things which we talk about, the Indian system of medicine, so many things about the Ayurveda, the mind and the body and the medicine, and the way you are trying to analyze, because we respect all the views, because ultimately we are doing it for the betterment of the science, and whatever you are doing is also one of the alternatives. I think it is, with more evidence, it is going to be accepted more and more. So wonderful talk. So these are just a few comments from myself.
Jyoti sir, if we should look forward to something in the coming few months or coming few years in terms of non-invasive monitoring, what should we be looking forward to most?
I am glad to let you know, Dhruvi, Amit and my friends, there are a few startups in India also. And there are a couple of young boys from some IITs in India working on non-invasive monitoring. And some of them are working with the wearable socks with multiple sensors. So we wear a socks, and the socks is continuously monitoring the glucose. And according to them, it is very, very cheap. Very cheap, and the battery is going to last for more than 1 year. And no recurrent expenses at all. And some of them are also developing a small patch similar to the size of a Libre 3. So the future is almost here. The future is almost here. Because the technology is advancing, because the technology is different from the technology which has been in existence in 2005. So what I foresee is within the next 6 months or so, because I have shown this device, which is e-touchers, and the next generation of this device will be there in the market. And that is probably going to be much more accurate and reliable. So it will be there very soon, both for glucose meters and also for replacing the CGM meters. So the CGM devices, I think, will be more popular as a non-invasive one.
Dr. Jyoti Dev, you very rightly said, I am on the Government of India panel, which gives funding to startups, entrepreneurs. Basically, so I have been seeing so many Indian entrepreneurs, IITians, engineers, who have done a lot of startups in the wearables. And as you said, on one touch, they measure all the parameters, what you showed, and some more. The only major challenge is clinical validation, as you rightly said. And I don't know why I have been on their panel for last 3 years. So many of them have come. Still, none of them progress beyond clinical validation, or they fail there. And I don't know, the challenge is there. They just get somewhere synced in the clinical part. Lack of clinical validation, clinical trials, and clinical studies.
Devashish, they need to partner with doctors from the first day onwards. That is what they are not doing.
We tell them, sir.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
tell them. There is a way for them to partner with. The government of India has identified 8 big centers, which they have to be part of that. And then that is my advice to them. Why don't you make a diabetologist or a physician from the day one your partner in the journey, so that that insight is there with you. They are just engineers. They don't understand the clinical part. They develop everything. That's the challenge.
Jyoti sir, if I can add or continue with the comment that you made. In fact, like with DTech, we are attempting to bridge that gap. And recently for this startup pavilion, as you are aware, we approached so many startups, and we are trying to create an ecosystem where the group of doctors, not just 1 or 2 doctors, but a whole group of doctors can be, of help for these startups to guide them, and that is what we are trying. I have one question, Dr. Jyoti. Like Dr. Devashi just said, that there is a lack of clinical validation, but even with the SMBG, we are accepting that variation of 10%, 15%, which was earlier 15%. So maybe even for the non-glucosive meters, even if there is a variation of plus minus 20%, 25%, probably that would be still useful, because it's anyways not replacing your conventional monitoring. It's just assistance, or additional tool that you are having at your monitoring. What do you say, sir?
Agreed, Rakesh. The problem here is not the variability. The problem here is not just the variability. When you are repeating the same after 5 minutes or after 2 minutes, there is a huge difference. And in the same person, when you are doing it in different places, again, there is a difference. So that is the reason why all the optical methods failed. And now we are going for the biofluids. So probably there will be one mechanism by which we will be successful. And as we discussed earlier, these engineers need to be there partnering with us.
Right.
Because when I am there as an advisor for a couple of them, I realized that, as Dr. Devashi said, they don't know anything about normal glucose, abnormal glucose, diabetes or type 1 diabetes. And even for this device, they have categorically stated that never use in type 1 diabetes. And when we contacted online, they again asked us a question: are you using it for normal people or for type 2 diabetes? And there is a mode for normal. And when I am testing it with normal, I get one value. When I'm changing the mode to pre-diabetes, I get another value. And at the same time, within seconds, when I'm changing to type 2 diabetes, I get a higher value. So obviously, that means for the 30,000 Indian rupees I have paid, this is just a prototype.
Right.
This cannot be used for any clinical purpose.
And they have different algorithms for different sets. That's why your values are coming.
And Devashish, there are options for calibration. And that is a sophisticated mechanism by which we can calibrate with the help of a glucose meter. And then you have to customize, and only one person should be using it. Then probably it will become more accurate. So there are probably chances that this is going to be much more accurate in the days to come. So that is why I said in the next 6 months or so, 1 or 2 of these devices might get launched. And I believe that that is going to be a CGM rather than a glucose meter. Right. Because it is easier for them to develop a CGM out of this. Much more easier.
So your comment regarding the lack of inputs from medical doctor reminded me of a story. You would be aware of the Defeat Diabetes campaign that we did. So the data analysis was given to some guys from IT or engineering background, and they came out with finding that the best predictor for a person being diabetic is that he is on OHA. So
disgusting.
So that is totally true. That if you don't take a doctor on board, you will probably do the maths well, but you won't understand the logic, right? Okay, so we may move on. The chairpersons can take it forward.
Thank you. So I think we are almost at 6:30, and if you do not have any questions, I think I would like to thank Dr. Lee, Dr. Chi, and Dr. Jyoti.
Precision medicine you can divide it.
All right. Okay. So I think if we have the permission, I would like to thank all our esteemed panelists for a very thought-provoking and futuristic session on futuristic technologies and making us to think more about mind and body as well as alternative sources or alternative ways of giving insulin, along with non-invasive technologies for monitoring. So with that, I thank all our esteemed faculty